Welcome to the In-Rem Podcast, where we discuss the law for real estate investors. Andy and Sean are both attorneys. Nothing said in this discussion should be considered legal advice. We're simply providing information and education. You should consult with an attorney in your state regarding any specific legal issue that you may have. Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Our topic is why flips fail. I'm Andy Fowler, and I'm here with Sean St. Clair. If you're new to the show, give us a like. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. You can find us just about anywhere. We appreciate the follow. With that, we're going to go to Sean. Sean, give us our legal update.
Thanks, Andy. Today, what I want to talk about on our legal update is subject to transactions, and in particular, the documents needed for a subject to transaction. A subject to transaction is one where you purchase the property, but there's an existing loan against the property, and you buy it subject to that loan. So that loan remains. And because that loan remains, there's certain things that have to be done to protect both the buyer and the seller in that transaction, as well as certain disclosures and things like that that have to be made. So the first document, and you need this in every real estate transaction, but in particular, you want some terms in a subject to transaction that you wouldn't find in a regular one, which is a purchase contract. So you need a purchase contract, but that purchase contract should identify the existing loans that are going to remain, any reinstatement amounts that need to be paid, to bring those loans current. Because a lot of times on subject to, that's why a homeowner selling the property subject to is because they can't afford to make the payments on the loan. So the reinstatement amounts, any other amounts that need to be paid as far as other creditors, HOA is another one where a lot of times the HOA is in arrears, and so you might not be a lien yet, or a judgment yet, but you may need to pay that. And so you want to document all of that as part of your purchase price. The second thing that you're going to want is a subject to addendum. So this is an addendum that accompanies the purchase contract. It should be signed at the time of the purchase contract. And this addendum is going to have tons of disclosures in it for both the buyer and the seller. It's going to explain, hey, look, this is the nature of the transaction. This is subject to. The existing loan or loans are going to remain. And here are the risks. One of the major risks is the due on sale clause. The minute that property transfers, 95% of all loan documents are going to have a provision in there that says, okay, look, this property, if you transfer it, just know that we now have a new contractual right that we didn't have before. And that contractual right is at our discretion, we can call the loan due. And we have the right to, enforce the due on sale clause and basically say, hey, look, everything's due now because you transferred the property. Now there's processes and procedures in place as far as what it looks like to invoke the due on sale clause and to accelerate the debt to, maybe even foreclose. But nevertheless, it does give the lender the ability to do that should they choose. They don't have to. It's not an automatic, hey, the loan is due on sale. It requires the lender actively saying, okay, we are going to enforce the due on sale clause. But we want to disclose that to both the buyer and the seller. And you say, okay, well, the buyer knows that, right? They're buying it subject to. Why do you have to disclose it to the buyer? Well, a subject to transaction can actually be assigned. And so you want to make sure that if you're going to assign a subject to transaction, that the buyer purchasing it knows and has those disclosures, right? So if you assign the purchase contract, you're also assigning that addendum, which then gives those disclosures. So now the buyer knows, oh, okay, this is subject to. I'm receiving a copy of the addendum as the assignee, and I'm stepping into the shoes as though I, signed and executed and agreed to that. The assignment also should have some language in there as far as the that it's a subject to transaction, but nevertheless, you're putting those disclosures in so that the new buyer, the end buyer, doesn't come back and say, well, I was not aware of any of this, type of thing. The addendum also provides that the seller will execute certain agreements at closing. And we're going to not agreements, but documents at closing. We're going to talk about what those documents are in a minute. But it says, hey, there's certain documents that you need to sign that gives us certain power and authority with respect to the property. And you're going to sign those on or before the close of escrow. And then the third thing that the addendum does is it has what we call a cooperations clause, which basically says, hey, look, there's a universe of things that can happen with the subject to transaction. What we do know, though, is that you're going to cooperate, seller. You're going to take steps necessary for the parties to act according to their agreement, to enforce the agreement, to effectuate the agreement, and you're going to cooperate even after the close of escrow. If something happens and I need loan information, you're going to cooperate and you're going to work to provide that loan information to me as the new owner of the property. And then from there, the documents that you're going to want to have executed on or before close of escrow is an authorization to release information for the existing loans, as well as any insurer of the property. As the new buyer, you generally are going to put your own insurance in place, but there could be a lapse in time where the existing seller's insurance remains, or you may choose to keep the seller's insurance in place, but you want to make sure that you're able to obtain information from the insurance company. You want an instruction letter to the existing lender what to do with monies that are being held in their impound or escrow account, meaning most lenders require, as part of your loan payment, to pay an amount ahead of time for taxes and insurance. Well, what happens when that loan is paid off? Let's say you as the new buyer, you go and you refinance that loan and you pay it off. Well, now there's money there. Well, that money that you've paid in for the last 3 years is going to go back to the seller unless you have some authorization or instruction telling that lender, hey, look, apply the existing impound or escrow balance to the payoff. So now I have a smaller payoff amount, or, issue a check to this, new buyer on the property. Then you have an assignment of insurance proceeds. So this is important, especially if you're going to keep the seller's insurance in place. You want that seller to basically say, hey, look, any interest that I may have in any claim related to the property, an insurance claim related to the property, I assign to the new buyer. So you want to make sure that they assign everything related to insurance to the new buyer. I've had circumstances and been involved in circumstances where something happened to the property. No assignment of insurance proceeds was executed. The insurance was still in the seller's name. And all of a sudden, the seller, who doesn't own the property anymore, has a right to the insurance money after the property burns down. Well, that's a problem, right? So you want to make sure to have that assignment in place. Then you want a limited power of attorney, basically allowing you as the buyer to act as with respect to that property, whether it's as to the loans, any future escrow, any insurer. You want to make sure that you have that, limited power of attorney that you can use kind of as a last resort. But should you need to make decisions with respect to the property, and should a financial institution or a title company say, well, we want to deal with the original, seller, or the borrower on the loan, or the original insured, you have this power of attorney that would allow you to step in and handle the transaction. And then finally, for seller financing or subject to transactions, I recommend for the protection of all parties involved, and especially the seller, putting in, some type of wrap loan in place. And so you would do a promissory note and deed of trust or mortgage, and the promissory note would have, basically it'd be what we call a mirror loan, which it mirrors, unless you're actually providing funds above the existing loans to the seller, and the seller's carrying back those funds. Otherwise, it's just going to mirror the existing loans and provide that, the monthly payments to be made on the new loan, the wrap loan are the same as the payments to be made to the existing lenders. So those are the documents that you generally are going to need for a successful subject to transaction.
All right. Thank you, Sean. With that, we're going to talk a little bit or about some in rem news. So, coming up here in the next month or this month of September, in rem is a podcast. We're going to be live on-site streaming from the Buy and Hold meetup. We'll be doing that on September 27th, starting at 4:00 p.m. The location for that meetup, if you are interested, and we encourage attendance, is Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors. So, Sean, let's give our listeners an idea about a few things about the event. So, who can come? If we've got listeners that are interested in coming and being at the Buy and Hold meetup, who is eligible?
So basically, anybody can come. It's a free event. Normally, well, the attendees are in real estate, whether they're real estate agents or licensees, investors, lenders, attorneys. So I regularly attend the event. There's other attorneys that represent investors that attend the event. Sometimes there's title companies, and their representatives are going to attend the event. But basically, anyone interested in real estate and in particular investing specifically for buy and holds, right? So your, rental properties, your Airbnbs, VRBOs, those types of transactions is what the event focuses on and deals with.
So it's really for professionals in the area for reasons of gaining knowledge, marketing, whatever the case may be. Who's speaking at the event? What's the topic this September?
So I'm actually speaking at the event, and the topic is going to be similar to what I discussed, but in greater detail earlier, which is subject to transactions and creative financing. So I'm going to go into some more detail on different creative financing options as well, such as, agreements for sale, contract for deed, and talk about the different language that you're going to find in the different documents and things like that. So I'll be the speaker at that event here in September.
All right. So given that you're the speaker, why don't you explain for the listeners, what are we going to be doing as in rem while we're there?
Yeah. So what we're going to be doing is we're basically going to be live streaming at the beginning of the meetup. So the meetup starts at 4, but that's like open networking. And from 4 to 5, 5:15 is open networking. The speakers generally go on at 5:15, 5:30 until 6:30, 7. So that first hour and 15 minutes, we're going to be there on site, basically live, interviewing different people at the event. We'll be interviewing the hosts of the event, investors that are there. We be interviewing this in not this time because I'm the speaker, so I won't be interviewing myself. But in future times that we're out there, we're going to be interviewing the speakers. And then finally, towards the end of that open networking for maybe the last, 15 minutes to half an hour, we're going to open things up. And anybody attending the event can basically come on over to our table where we're live streaming and ask us some legal questions and obtain some legal information and education by just coming on over and submitting a question or even sitting down with us and asking us a question. So it'll be kind of almost an open mic for, legal information and education.
Folks, if you've gleaned anything from this is your opportunity for free legal advice. And if you pass this up, you're not going to make it. You need to be there for it. So we're excited about live streaming at the meet and greet. Hope to see you there. With that, let's get into our topic today. We're talking about flips. Specifically, we're talking about how flips fail. And to discuss that, we have with us in studio Andrew Bang. Andrew, how are you?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. Andrew is the Vice President of Lending with Boomerang Capital Partners. Andrew, tell us about Boomerang Capital Partners.
Yeah, Boomerang is a local REIT right here in the Phoenix Valley, and it's essentially a big fund of investor money, and we lend that money out to investors who are buying properties to fix up and flip or fix up and keep as rentals.
Now, Andrew, I know you're an attendee of the meet and greet. You're also a sponsor. How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, so probably 3 or 4 months. So Augie, the promoter of the event, I met him maybe a year ago, and yeah, and he invited me to come out, and no, it's a great event. The speakers there, I think, are doing they're speakers that are doing a lot of deals here in the Valley. They have a lot of knowledge, and then it's a small group, so you can ask questions. You get a lot of good knowledge that I haven't seen in other events that are really big, and it's a great little atmosphere, especially if you're starting off in real estate and want to learn how to those beginning strategies. It's a great event for that.
So I understand you have an interesting story about how you became involved in real estate and met your wife. Why don't you tell our listeners about that?
Yeah. So I met my wife in college, up at in Provo, Utah. So I was at Utah Valley University. She was at BYU, Brigham Young University. And once we started getting serious, I kind of told her, I understand the value of a 4-year degree. So I'm going to graduate, get my degree, but I had some construction experience, and I told her, I'll probably be doing something that's service oriented, working with my hands, and I wanted to be out in the field, working with clients. And but we got married. I graduated with an accounting degree I transferred to Arizona State University, and out of college, I got an accounting job. But at the same time, looking for opportunities for other, what else would be out there. And 2008 happened, and the market crashed, in real estate. And at the time, I was an accountant for a construction company, and we were doing new builds, and pretty much all of our sales just dropped off. And so they were looking for opportunities to expand. And I had a friend that made an offer on a property in Levine. It was a short sale, and she offered $190,000 for this property, and the bank did not accept it. And her realtor was educated in the trustee auctions, and she goes, "You know what? This property is actually going to trustee auction, Tiffany Bosco, that next week." And she's like, "We should go to the auction and try to buy it there." So they went to the auction a day early to try to figure out how it all worked, and they got the general understanding of bringing in $10,000 cashier check and bidding on the properties. And then that next day, they bought the property for $174,000. And so they're like, well, and when I heard this story, I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense. I mean, she wanted to buy it for 190,000. The bank said no, but then they accepted 174,000 that next week. And not only that, there's multiple offers on this house. There's other buyers that wanted it at that higher price. And so I said, well, there's an opportunity here. So I went to my bosses there at the construction company. I said, hey, instead of trying to build new builds right now, and which we can't, there's just no one buying new builds. Why don't we buy these distressed properties, fix them up, and sell them? And they gave me a chance. And March 2008, I bought my first home, and within 3 months, I had flipped 5 homes for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So, Andrew, I know you come at this topic from really both the investor side and the lending side, right? You've seen it on both. So, and again, if you've just joined us, we're talking about why flips fail. And we're going to go into a number of reasons and categories of reasons for flips failing. But first, we want to start with location. Okay, so what makes, in your experience, a good location for a flip?
Yeah, I love older established neighborhoods. I want a house, or I want comparable sales in a neighborhood where they have a home sold for 300,000 and a home sold for 900,000. I want the largest buyers pool that I can. And let me give you an example. If you buy a home in, say, Gilbert, you pick a neighborhood, and all the homes in that neighborhood have built between 1996 and 1997. And an 1,800 square foot house in that neighborhood has sold in between 550,000 and 600,000. So if I buy a house in that neighborhood and I put $100,000 into it, the most I can get for it is $600,000. If I put $10,000 into it, the most I can get for it is $600,000. I want a neighborhood that can support the amount of rehab, the amount of value that I can increase in it. So if I have an 800 square foot house in, say, Arcadia or Dobson Ranch or the older parts of Ahwatukee, those are great areas to target because you have comps from 300,000 all the way up to $1 million. So if I put the money into that house, I know there will be buyers in that neighborhood to buy the house.
How do you find, what's your method of finding these properties in kind of this ideal market that you're explaining?
Yeah. So you're looking for distress. So it's either a distressed owner or a distressed property. Those are the two ways to find a really good deal. And there's a good, better, best. So the good is going with a real estate agent. And we see this on HGTV. A lot of times, say if you're a first time investor and you're like, oh, I want to flip a home. What should we do? Well, let's call up a real estate agent and they'll help us find a house. Well, that's a good way to find a house. On the MLS, there are some deals, but they are hard to find. The better is wholesalers. So you get on all the wholesalers lists, and that's going to be mostly off-market properties. Now, the wholesalers are investors that go up and lock up properties under contract, and they're assigning that contract to the end investor so they can either flip it or keep it as a rental. The best is going directly to the owner. So you're looking for, right, the distressed owner, the distressed property. You're sending out mailers to properties that are distressed. You're selling out mailers or giving or calling or emailing owners that are distressed. The most popular list, the most popular way to find those is the 90, 60, 30-day late notices, homes that are in pre-foreclosure. You're talking to those owners and saying, hey, I understand you have an issue with your house. You have an issue with your bank. I'm a home solution company. Here's some ways that I can help you get out of this. And really, you're leading them down the path of, I'm going to buy your house for cash and get you out of this situation.
So it's not sufficient if you're wanting to get into this market to say, well, I've got my real estate license. I'm just going to go pull the MLS listings on everything that's out there and just compete with everybody buying. You've got to put in serious legwork ideally before it even gets to that point, right?
Yeah. I mean, the good deals are hard to find. If they weren't, then more people would be flipping and more people would be successful in their flips.
I think you indicated this in your last answer to some extent, but let's talk about the type of property. So we've kind of gotten into the market, where you're looking, but the type of property, and you mentioned distressed properties. Is that exclusively what you're looking for typically?
Well, you're looking for a good deal, right?
Okay.
And so when you get into a situation where the owner's distressed, the property isn't always distressed in that situation. The property might be very nice. It might have some rehab already done to it, have some upgrades, but it's the owner that's distressed. So in those situations, you can get a really good house for under market value that doesn't need a lot of work.
Okay, so distress doesn't have to just be referring to the condition of the property itself.
Yeah.
So as for the condition or the kind of property, what properties work best for those kind of flips and what don't, or what kind of set you up for success versus what sets you up for failure?
Yeah. So there's one property that sells for more per square footage, and has a smaller days on market than any other property in the Phoenix Valley. And it's a single story, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2-car garage with a pool. If you can hit all of those details, that house historically sells for more per square footage and has fewer days on market.
So you can, there's almost not almost, there is a science to this at this point for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, those are the homes you target, but really any home can be flipped if purchased for the right price.
So let's talk about, we've talked about location, the kind of property, the state that the property might be in. But now we want to move in. How are we going to acquire this property?
Yeah.
Maybe you're independently wealthy and you've got a treasure trove of cash waiting that's on the sidelines ready to buy, and you don't have that problem. For most of us, we don't have that problem. So let's talk about how these flips how we can go about purchasing it. I know you work in lending, uh, but what is your? I guess let's start as a kind of as an investor. What's your strategy? Whose money are you looking to work with?
Yeah. So I don't want to use my money unless I have to. I always want to use other people's money.
Why?
Your money can only go so far. So if I have a couple $100,000, I might be able to buy one flip. But if I use other people's money and leverage that, then I can have multiple properties going at the same time. And so, when I started out, I was looking for other people's money. It was the company I worked for. I was using their money. And then as I branched off, it was other people that I pitched to that, hey, do you want to get involved into real estate investing? And then I'd cut them in on a profit or it'd be a set interest rate. But then I found out about hard money lenders. And so a hard money lender is someone that is a fund or a financial institution that has the money specifically for fix and flips or buy and holds, these distressed properties.
Let's start to some extent from the beginning here. Let's say real estate investor comes to the meet and greet September 27th.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to advertise it. They come. They're new. They're like, this sounds great. I want to get into this. Where does that person begin to find the money?
Yeah, just talking to a lender. I want to lend money out. We want to find these first-time investors. And so what I say is get the property. The property is the most important. If you have a house that has value on it, enough for you to rehab it and for the profit, there's going to be lots of lenders out there to fund it.
Now, when you say talk to the lender, what a newbie is thinking is, I think of my own experience. I tried to go open up a bank account with a lending institution that's also a bank, and it happened to be one of these behemoth banks, right?
Yeah.
I could barely get them to open up an account. So the thought of talking to them or a traditional lender, for instance, about financing and getting them to hear me out my ideas is like going to the moon, right? It's like that doesn't even sound feasible. But lenders go beyond just our standard institutional lenders that we think about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a hard money lender is totally different than a big bank, than a traditional mortgage lender. A hard money loan is as close to a cash offer as you can get and still being a loan. You can almost say it's the equivalent of a cash offer. I pre-approve properties. I don't pre-approve borrowers. So if a property has the margin in it, I can lend on it to any borrower as long as there's a very few exceptions. And so how can these borrowers find people like me, these hard money lenders? Well, it's going to real estate investment groups. It's going online to websites like Bigger Pocket or, watching real estate investment podcasts and then asking for referrals for those who are already in the business.
So finding the money is really a lot like finding the deal. It sounds like it's really networking. It's getting involved within the communities, others that are doing it, and making contacts. Is that right?
Absolutely. I would definitely consider myself a relationship-based lender. I get out there to as many events as I can. I'm as active as I can be on Facebook groups, investment groups, and I try to get out and talk to people one-on-one, meet up with them for lunch, and just let people know what I do.
How is the process any different for raising the money?
Yeah. So that side of it is, so I'm just a loan originator for Boomerang Capital.
Sure.
There's 3 partners. What they focus on is bringing in that money to make sure that the fund, the REIT, has the money available. So when I go out and get these loans, that we can lend it out. And so they're constantly going to different conferences, financial advisor conferences types, and then it starts off kind of friends and family money, and then grows from there. Well, now there's we're getting bigger lumps of cash. Comes at the beginning, it was 100,000, 500,000 here or there, and now it's 5 million here, 10 million there. Yeah.
All right, I want to move the conversation and start talking about mistakes. We've got listeners that said, man, I want to hear how it failed. You promised to tell us how it fails. So let's hear it. So let's get into the mistakes that we need to avoid. And as an investor and somebody coming from the lending background, I'm sure you've seen an unimaginable amount of mistakes and where deals have gone wrong. Um, let's talk about poorly formed partnerships. To what extent does that factor in, and would you consider that a big mistake?
Yeah, absolutely. So, an example I give is last Monday. I showed up to work. I was walking into my office and I looked down and I had one black shoe on and one brown shoe on. And I'm like, man, how did this happen? Well, I was early in the morning. I'd gotten up and I wasn't really paying attention. I was focusing on the wrong things. And as an investor, especially a first time investor, they will often focus on the wrong things when it comes to flips. They see the money, they see the fame, the glitz, the glam. When a flip can go wrong right from the beginning if the partnership isn't formed right, and not many people think about that. Not many people are focused on that when they flip a house. Let me give you an example. If we could throw up the picture of that first house, Sean. So this house here is in Dallas, and the investors were Eddie and Mark. And Mark he had the experience in flipping homes and finding homes. Eddie is the contractor for this deal, and they form a partnership to buy homes and fix them up. And so I met them early on when they hadn't flipped any homes, and I financed a couple deals for them, and they did really well. And Eddie he still is. He's an excellent contractor, so much so that I was referring him out to other clients there in Dallas. Give him you need a good contractor. Here's Eddie's number. And so they flipped, I think, 5 or 6 homes, and they're doing really well. And so we continued to fund homes for them. And at one point, we had 6 loans out for them. They had 6 homes going at the same time.
Mm.
And they had bought that property there for $149,000. They had put $30,000 into it. It was a full rehab, looked amazing. They put it on the market at $250,000, which at the time was maybe a little higher price for the neighborhood. And they don't get any offers. And it's just sitting there. And what I noticed was the other properties, they weren't progressing as fast as they used to. And while all this is going on, Mark has a heart attack. He goes into the hospital, and they miss a payment. And Mark's in the hospital for an extended period of time. We don't know what's happening there. And I call up Eddie and I say, Eddie, you guys, I understand a lot's going on, but you missed a payment. We got to make a payment here. We don't want to get behind on these. And he goes, I don't know anything about the finances. Mark's handled all that. I'm like, well, it's time to get involved now, And so he gets the books, he gets involved in the bank account, and he's looking it over, and it's a mess. Unfortunately, Mark did not keep good books. It was not organized. There's cross collateralization between properties with whether they're taking funds for rehab, and maybe it's not going to a specific property. It's spread out between them. And so while Eddie's trying to figure this out, they get an offer for $220,000 on this property. I'm like, that's great. It's plenty of room. Go ahead and accept this offer. You guys make some money on this and we'll move on. You can make all your other payments. And he goes, I can't accept this offer. And he's like, well, Mark took out a second on this property, and he took out a second on all the other properties. And not only that, the seconds they took out, they didn't keep them, just with each property. They'd take out a second on one property, and that money might go to the down payment on another property, maybe the rehab on another property. It was a mess. And so what happened was we ended up taking all 6 properties back, unfortunately. And what I learned was when you're starting a partnership, there needs to be 100% transparency between partners. There needs to be responsibility between partners. It was Eddie's bank account they were using, but Mark had full access to that bank account. But there was no responsibility there. So when I say, well, when you buy a flip and you have some partners, you need a partnership agreement that has 3 things. It needs to have a defined role for each partner. It needs to have transparency, and it needs to show and list what the responsibilities of each partner is.
Yeah, and I think Sean, you could even speak to this to some extent, but we've talked about this in past episodes with succession planning, the ability of, if it's not unusual for one of those partners, right? To be maybe is the good business person, and maybe the other one's the contractor, for instance. And I'm good at keeping the books, but my skill level at keeping the books isn't going to get us anywhere if I have a heart attack, like in your case, or I end up in the hospital. You have to have the documentation in place to allow the partner to step in and take over, right? To make the payments, to sell the property, to do this, to make sure it goes as it should.
So, Andrew, what kind of documents would you want to see partners have when they are going to go into short-term real estate ventures together, i.e., flips? Because a lot of times on these flips, I know from experience, you might have somebody who independently has their own real estate company. Maybe they're wholesaling, maybe they're, buying and holding. And then they decide, well, I have the knowledge and ability to find a deal, but I don't know how to do the work, kind of like the example you were giving. But I know someone else who can come in and help me do the work and knows all the contractors and different people who can get this done. So you partner together, but you're not creating like a marriage, right? It's not a long-term deal, right? It's just a short-term, like, hey, we're in, we're out. It's one property. Maybe we'll do others together, maybe we won't. But right now, all we know is we're going to be, partners on this one, transaction. Uh, what kind of documents would you want to see partners have when they're just dealing with one particular transaction?
Yeah, I'd still want a full partnership agreement or joint venture agreement. I want it as detailed as possible, listing everything that could go wrong with the property. There needs to be something listed in that partnership agreement that says how we're going to deal with it. So, for example, me and my buddy are going to flip one home. That's our plan. We're going to buy a home, fix it up, and sell it. But in that partnership agreement, one of us needs to take responsibility if we can't sell it for whatever reason, whatever happens. And then the clause that I like is after 4 months, I have a 4-month and an 8-month clause. If the property is on the market for 4 months and is not sold, one of the partners has an option of refinancing that property. And in the event that that happens, the other partner loses all interest in the deal. And it's written out in legal terms. Of course, get your attorneys involved. And then if they don't accept that clause, if they don't choose that option, after 8 months on the market, that they can choose that again. So you have specific exit strategies in the event that the home does not flip. And so everyone knows that going in. Look, our intention is to sell this house and make money. But if that doesn't happen, this is what's going to happen. There's one partner that's going to take responsibility for this house and keep it as a rental, or we're all going to take a loss. It's all listed out in that agreement. The other thing that I like is with responsibility and who makes the decisions. As a lender, I want to know who has the experience in the deal, who has the money in the deal, not only the money at the beginning, but who's paying for the ongoing expenses, whose bank account's going to be used, who has access to that bank account, who's making the decisions on the rehab designs, and who has final decisions if anything goes wrong. The biggest red flag I see in partnerships, especially partnerships that have multiple partners, is the partner with the least amount of experience, who does not have the most money in the deal, is making the decisions because they have the strongest personality. That's the biggest red flag I see, and it's a situation that I try to get partnerships to avoid and make sure that partnership agreement is as solid as possible so that does not happen.
So along those lines, I mean, the situation that you had, with the partner who ended up in the hospital and the partner that wasn't maybe the strongest personality, they weren't going forward, or they didn't know really how to go forward, and then everything was a mess. Well, you have a joint venture agreement. And a joint venture agreement assumes that you're not going to both be members or parties to an entity, right? You're not going to be shareholders and directors of a corporation. You're not going to be members of a limited liability company. Instead, basically it's a partnership agreement. You're going to be partners with respect to this one property. However, a good provision in a joint venture agreement that would avoid this scenario that you had would be that all parties, all owners, all interest holders have to agree on any type of lien or using the property as collateral, refinance, that type of thing. And now that agreement only does you so much if title to the property is held properly, right? So in a joint venture scenario, the mistake I want my clients to avoid is basically going in and one partner owning the property and then nobody else having an interest, even if it's putting somebody on at 10%, because we all know a title company is not going to do anything with respect to the property until that 10%, owner comes forward and says, oh yeah, I'm agreeable to, leaning up this property or selling this property or whatever the case may be. Now in an operating agreement and that's another approach, right? It's cheap to form an LLC. So you could say, hey, look, I want to go in this deal with you. Let's just form an LLC. Let's put title of the property in the name of the LLC. And then you can do an operating agreement that has those same terms. Your operating agreement can kind of mirror your joint venture agreement and basically say, oh, well, we can't add liens to this property without, super majority consent if there's more than two owners or unanimous consent. It can also have those provisions that you were talking about, which is, hey, look, one member has the ability to buy out another member if this property is not selling, right? It's a lot, in my view. Well, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen the other, but the ability to buy out a member in some ways is a little less complicated for a membership interest than maybe a real property interest, because a real property interest, likely would involve going through a title company and things like that, versus a membership interest, can be bought out, outside of escrow. And you don't have to redo any of the title paperwork or anything like that. So those are, when we're talking about agreements, you're talking, joint venture agreements, partnership agreements, operating agreements, those are the types of things. I want to show you another photo here. Talk to us about this property here. That involved, some partners. And there's 2 photos. It's the same property, but one's a couple years later. Tell us about this particular transaction and what went wrong there.
Yeah. So 4 partners started out. They bought that home. It's in New Orleans, and it's a nice house. They got it for a good deal. But each one of them, they had full-time employment. And so this flipping a home was their side thing they're trying to do. And none of them fully committed to the project. It took forever to get anything done because no one was really taking the lead on it. So that first picture and then the second picture, those are a year apart, and $150,000 was put into that house in that time frame, but you could barely see any difference, especially from the exterior of the property. After that 1 year, they ran out of money. So they're like, well, we need to bring more partners on. That's what their solution was. So they brought in 3 more partners. So there's 7 partners total. Those new partners brought in more money. And what happened was when you're already involved in a project and you have $150,000 that you put into it, you think, oh, my opinion matters. I should be the one making the decision. But then if you're a new partner and you're coming into a deal a year later, you're saying this project has a lot of problems with it. That's why I'm joining the partnership. And so my opinion needs to matter. Everyone needs to listen to me because I'm the new person that's coming in with the new money. And so you have 7 partners that couldn't make a decision about anything. Took a whole nother year to put the home on the market, another 40,000. They end up losing about 190,000 they put into it. And the question was, well, why did you guys bring so many partners into this deal? And their answers was really the same answers that I came up with. And it's, well, if there's more people involved in the deal, then there's less risk for each of us. If there is a loss, then each of us will lose less money. With more people involved in the deal, I don't have to spend as much of my own time because we can spread out the responsibilities. But what ended up happening was nothing was getting done. There was too many opinions in the room. There's not one person making the decisions, leading them all. And it just was a mess. And they ended up losing money because of it. And it goes back to that partnership agreement. You need to have defined roles. You need to know who is leading this group of investors, who is making the final decisions, and you just you need to have that all worked out beforehand.
Well, that's interesting, because yes, an operating agreement would likely have resolved that if you just put one or two people in charge. A lot of times, though, investors don't want to do that. And the reason is because if you have, silent partners or, members that aren't also managers, now all of a sudden you're bringing securities involved, right? And so now you're raising capital from, individuals who aren't active in the transaction. So one way around that, right, is to make everybody a manager or be a member managed LLC where everyone has a voice. But then you go from, if it's one or two people on a flip, and flips go fast, right? I mean, they're meant to go fast. You go from a speedboat and you're able to just, turn really, really quickly to, like a cruise ship, right? And it's going to just, you got to slowly turn because you need everybody's opinion, and just the idea of getting everybody in a room to vote, everybody on a call, because, investors at the end of the day, if you're able to put in that type of capital to improve a property, normally you're a successful individual and this isn't your day job. And so you're busy with family and work and other commitments that, you're the partners want to schedule something and it's important and it's urgent and you need to make a decision, yet they're nowhere to be found. So there's kind of that balance between, hey, we're going to bring in everybody, versus, you know what, let's just keep it tight. Let's, instead of raising capital from investors, let's go to Andrew, right? Let's get a hard money loan, right? Yeah. Let's do something like that so that we're in control of this transaction. And we're not having to, have all these voices in the room. So that's a great example of where problems can lie.
Yeah.
Do you mentioned this before, but when there's an apparent significant disparity in financial resources among partners, but there's an obvious personality that's wanting to run the ship, and it's not the one with the money, is that an immediate red flag as a lender?
Absolutely. I mean, and when a lender gets involved in the deal, something has gone horribly wrong, right? We just want to lend our money out, have it make friends, and come back. We don't want any properties. So if the lender's involved in the deal, we want to see what partners have assets at risk, what partners have potential losses at the end, and which partners only have potential gains. And if there's a partner that has no assets at risk, only has the potential to make money but not lose money, we want them out of the decision-making process, and if possible, out of that partnership.
Do you think a lot of this happens to be because the person coming to the table with lots of money, maybe he's been a success in another area, they may be actually used to making money passively, right? They've had their money with an investor. They've been eligible for all different types of opportunities where they didn't have to necessarily run the ship. And real estate's an entirely different animal, or at least it is if you're just going as a partner with somebody getting ready to do a flip. Do you think that has a lot to do with it? Just where those with the money have been used to making it a certain way and just assume, well, I'm going to just do this way and trust so-and-so to do it.
Right. No, absolutely. I see that a lot where people that are involved don't have the experience and they're just in there to make money, but maybe they're trying to push their opinions because they saw an HGTV show or they're listening to someone else's opinions who may not have that experience needed to get that job done.
So let's talk about another big area fraught with the opportunity to make mistakes. And that, I think this could all be boiled down to everybody trying to save their bottom line and spend as little money as possible. But that's doing the work on your own or hiring bad contractors.
Right.
Uh, Give us some examples of this. And I think we even have some photos.
Yeah, what do we got? Oh yeah, this house here is in the Cherry Lynn district in Phoenix, which is a really nice area there in central Phoenix. And the individual that bought this, her name's Karen. She was a retired school bus driver. She had never flipped a home before, but that's fine. Everyone's got to start somewhere. So she found this property and she actually got it for a really good deal. She paid $289,000 for it. And about 3 or 4 homes down from this property, there was a home that just sold for like 640,000. But in the Cherry Lynn district, there's, parts of it are historic and parts of it, parts are built in the 20s, parts are built in the 50s. And so you got a variety of houses there. This home was built in the 1950s. The home that had sold over 600,000 was built in the 20s and had a lot of character. So I went with Karen and I walked this property before we closed on it because I had some concerns about the property and I wanted to meet her. And I liked Karen. She was organized. She had done her research, and she had a plan for this house. But I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I don't like the curb appeal at all. They had converted a garage to livable square footage. You could in the floor plan, it had like a galley kitchen that was closed off. The master bathroom you could see there is just a square room that had a tub in one corner, a shower in the other. It wasn't set up well. And so I had concerns about that. And I asked Karen, and she didn't have specific answers for each of these, but she said, I have a contractor I really like and who has some experience in flips I'm going to use. I said, great. So we set up another meeting with the contractor at the house. We walked through it. I liked the contractor. We set a budget at 80,000. He had a detailed itemized budget. He had plans for the curb appeal. Him and Karen were on the same page. Great. We closed the deal. About a week or two goes by. I don't hear from her. I give her a call. I say, hey, Karen, how's it going? How's the property? Do you guys need a rehab draw? And she goes, well, I'm actually at the property. I'm painting right now. And my mouth just drops. And I'm like, Karen, you're painting? What happened to the contractor? And she goes, well, I thought $80,000 was too much to put into this house. I wanted to save some money, so I'm going to do the work myself. I'm like, Karen, do you have any experience with painting or construction? She had said no, but I watched some YouTube videos on how to tile a floor, and I'm like, no, Karen, no, this is not going to be good. But at that point, I'm the lender, and it's her property, and so there wasn't too much I could do, except hopefully it turns out there's still a good margin in the property. But about a month goes by, I give her a call, and she did not complete the remodel. I said, hey, I'm going to go stop by the property. When I walk in, half the property was painted, the interior. And she had chosen this like light blue color. She had not done any drywall repairs before she started painting. And I saw exactly what happened. She got done with painting about half the house. She looked back at her completed work and she said, this has made absolutely no difference. And she got in over her head and she gave up. And so often when we're trying, the investors try to cut corners, do the work themselves, but the quality of a homeowner's work is much different than the quality of a good contractor. Not only that contractor having remodeled a number of homes, especially if they've done flip homes, they know certain things that they need to spend more time in. They need a certain level of quality in the house. So when those buyers walk through, that house stands out and the buyers want to make an offer and buy it.
Very interesting. So let's talk about a similar area, but poor design. And I assume that what we really mean by that is not knowing well what sells to buyers on a flip. So give us some examples. And I know we have some additional photos on poor design, but tell us how that can turn a flip the other way.
Yeah, for sure. How about we show one of my own mistakes? Sean, do you have that picture of that kitchen? Oh, that's a caption challenge there. If you were a real estate agent and that's the bathroom, how would you list that on the for sale?
Is that not a good design?
Man, I mean, open aired bathroom.
Where did you find this photo?
Oh man, I don't even remember. It's an old one. I think one of the partners was using this in another presentation. I'm like, I need that photo. Can you give that to me? Because that's
it's for somebody on the move. I mean, come on, it's efficient.
It is efficient.
Bathroom with a view.
Your kids would remember. Hey, what do I need to do before I go downstairs and get ready for the day? Right.
Yeah. And that's the real bathroom. They got the tile. They got the plumbing in. That's the real deal there.
Oh man. All right, let's throw up a real photo here.
Yeah, so this is a house I flipped in Mesa a number of years ago. So right before I flipped this house, I had flipped a historic home in Phoenix. And in this historic home had beautiful custom cabinets. And the upper cabinets were like a white shaker, and they all had glass inserts. Very beautiful. The base cabinets were the same, but they had a lot of wear and tear. They're beat up, so I couldn't save those. So I saved the upper cabinets, the white, and then I put in like a dark mahogany on the base cabinets, and that kitchen, it popped. It was amazing. The house sold. It was really nice. So right after that home, I get this one in Mesa. This home was built about 1912, an older house. And I say, I should try to do kind of the similar design. Not only that, I've got all these leftover cabinets in my garage from all these kitchens I've done. I've got a few cabinets here, a few cabinets there, and my wife is getting after me because she can't even park her car in the garage anymore. She's got my materials everywhere. So I that's what I did for this house. You could tell the island there is a cherry cabinet. I got the brown base cabinets and then the white uppers. And this kitchen did not look nice at all. It did not. You walk into it and you're like, it's new and it's usable, but it does not look good at all.
Now, was this apparent to you as soon as it was complete, or did this have to?
It had to be complete. You know what I thought it would do it? I said, once the countertops go in, it's going to tie it all together. Countertops went in. I'm like, nope, it made it worse. So
at that point, did you just you list it? Let's see if there's folks that are interested.
And the most important thing about a flip is buying it at the right price. And so if you buy it at the right price, where you have a little bit of room for air, and that air can be in the remodel or that air can be in the listing price. So this one, I didn't go over budget. And so I had a little bit of room, so I could drop that price to sell at a price point that reflected the quality of that kitchen. So I sold the house and I still made some money. And the new buyers probably bought that house and then tore out the kitchen right after they closed on it.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. This information has been amazing. Where can our listeners find and connect with you?
Yeah, so boomerangcapital.com is our website. You can go there. My contact's on there, or email is andrew@boomerangcapital.com. I'm also on social media, so you can find me on Instagram. And my handle is Andrew Bang, the best flipping lender.
All right. Well, with that, Andrew, thanks so much for being with us. Just a reminder, our next show next week, be with us. We're talking about short-term rental laws, how to protect your vacation rental rights. And with us, we're going to have local attorney Christopher Charles. With that, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Have a good day, everyone.